If you ever want to know what my life is like, in the middle of filming this video, a cat just randomly ran into my apartment from the middle of the hallway, and I spent the last hour trying to find it in my apartment. And it was a little 4-pound kitten, and we finally found it, and the owner has it now.
Come here, come here. Come here, baby. Come here. Come here. Come here.
That's how my day's been going. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Happy 2022, we're finally here. Okay, so today is really exciting because I'm gonna be telling you my top 10 books of 2021, and we're gonna be going in order from number 10 being like, this was a great book, but it's not my top book of the year, all the way to number 1 being my top book. So it's like a little bit of a countdown type situation. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Okay, before we start, I want to say two things. The first being that these are books that I read in 2021, so it doesn't have anything to do with publication date. Also, I want to say that picking this list was really hard, and I also didn't go by ratings. So there are a lot of books that I read this year that were 5 stars that aren't on this list, and there are even some 3 stars on this list. So we got a pretty good mix of everything. So number 10 on my list is Cersei by Madeline Miller. I read this over the summer and it was like the perfect summer book. Cersei is the story of Cersei. It just kind of follows her through her life and her development as a sorceress, as a woman in ancient Greece. The writing, the world, incredible. I read this while I was in the Pocono Mountains and it was just the perfect nature book to read. It was everything. I just want to live in a little cottage on an island by the sea and get to pick herbs all day. Like, that's kind of all I want in my life. So I actually gave this book a 3-star. And you might be wondering, Sarah, why is a book that you gave a 3-star on your top 10 favorite books of the year? Originally, I gave it a 3-star because I felt like there were all these cameos of historical and mythological figures that were coming into Cersei's life, but we didn't actually have enough focus on Cersei. Like, it was very weird where all the development would happen to these random side characters that would just kind of come in and out of her life really randomly and then just disappear forever, and the development wasn't actually focused on Cersei, and the book is supposed to be a character study of Cersei. So I was like, that doesn't make sense. I don't like this. This is not working for me. I also was a little disappointed that we didn't get to see as much of Cersei's witchcraft. I was really excited to see that kind of develop and get the witchy details of the witchcraft because I'm super into that kind of stuff. However, as the year has progressed, this is a book that I have not been able to stop thinking about. It's a book that has given me good vibes just nonstop. It's a book that I didn't think I was ever gonna reread, but I think I want to reread having taken some space from it. The vibes in this book are just immaculate, and I gotta say that is really the reason why it is on this list. So that was number 10 on the list, Cersei by Madeline Miller. My hair is really bothering me. I just got out of the shower, so it's very wet. Is it better this way? Number 9 on this list is gonna surprise you, and that's because it is a romance book, and that romance book is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. Okay, y'all know I don't read romance, but this book made me think that romance might actually be for me. I read this book in the middle of December, and since I've read this book, every single book I've read since the middle of December has been romance. I've officially entered my romance era, and it is all thanks to this book. So The Love Hypothesis is about this girl, Olive, and she is a PhD student at Stanford. She gets into this fake dating situationship with this guy, Adam, who is a professor in the department, and the whole reason they start fake dating is stupid. I have to say, I gave this book 4 stars. There's a lot of things in this book that I love. However, there are a lot of cheesy, bordering on cringy scenes. I was able to overlook them because I liked the rest of the book so much. I know a lot of people took issue with the cringe in those scenes, and I understand. I kind of knew it was going to be cringy going into it. I had heard those critiques before, so it didn't bother me. I can't talk about this book without mentioning the fact that I'm sure you already know, which is that this started out as a Kylo Ren and Rey fanfiction. However, reading this, I don't see it. The only connection I can see to that at at all is the fact that the main guy, Adam, is clearly supposed to be Adam Driver. Personally, I did not have an issue with that. This has literally nothing to do with Star Wars. So if that's kind of an ick to you, if you don't want to read this book because of that, it doesn't matter. It's not going to stop your enjoyment of the book. They don't even talk about Star Wars. This is exactly the kind of slow burn, funny, plot-driven romance that I want. Because in my romances, I need there to be enough plot to balance out the romance. I can't just do all mushy, ushy, gushy love and smut. There has to be something more for me to kind of attach myself to a book. And this book gave me more, gave me a lot more. And it was slow burn. And I love me a slow burn. I love a good slow burn. I was literally addicted to this book. And that's also strange because this is a book about science. This is a book about science academia. And I am not a math and science person at all. However, I was obsessed with this and it definitely deserves to be on the favorite books of the year list. Next book I have is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is a dark academia book. Very controversial, very mixed reviews. I'm gonna explain this to you the way that I think this should be explained, because the way that I have always heard this book described, I don't think actually captures what the book is about. This book follows Alex Stern. She gets this full ride scholarship to Yale under the pretense that she is going to be a part of this Ninth House, Ninth Secret Society that is in charge of keeping all of the other secret societies at Yale in check. The thing is, in this book, all of the secret societies at Yale practice magic. There's also a murder mystery in this book. One of the main characters goes missing and Alex is semi-responsible but also maybe not responsible and trying to figure out what happened to them and how to get them back. And are they dead? Are they alive? Are they half alive and half dead? What is going on? Let's find out. This book has a wonderful dark academia feel. It gave me everything I wanted. It was fun. There was magic. There was mystery, morally gray characters. Another element of this book I really loved is that the main character is Jewish. She is Sephardic Jewish. I really don't ever get to read books where characters are Jewish, and as a Jewish woman, I really appreciate that. Also, there are some beautiful Sephardic ballads in here. This book reached out and grabbed me by the throat, and for that, I have to say to Miss Bardugo, thank you, and please do it again. Number 7 is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I read this book over the summer. My mind was in tatters after finishing it, and I say that in the best possible way. The writing is beyond words. It's beyond description how beautiful it is. But it is this kind of long, extended letter written by this boy named Little Dog to his mother who cannot read, and it describes the story of his experiences growing up as a queer Vietnamese boy living in poverty in America, and his experiences having a mother who was a Vietnamese immigrant, and his mother's experience and his grandmother's experience during the Vietnam War and immigrating to America, and how all of these traumas affect him, and class and race and gender and sexuality and intimacy and cycles of violence and abuse. And oh my god, it's so good. This book is pretty graphic, so if any of those things that I just said are not something you're comfortable with reading about, I wouldn't recommend this, but it is pretty small, and the way that the prose it just has this delectable writing, and I'm actually going to be reading this in the new year, and I'm going to be annotating it because I didn't do it the first time, and I want this book annotated because I'm obsessed with it. I also have Ocean Vuong's collection of poetry, Night Sky with Exit Wounds, which I'm also going to be reading this coming year. I'm very excited for it. The next book, number 6, is actually the last book I read in 2021. It is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Woo! This book took me on a ride. I finished it in 2 days. I couldn't put it down. I was actually obsessed with it. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid is kind of what it sounds like. It's about this old Hollywood starlet, think like Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe type vibes, and it goes through her life with her 7 husbands, but the secret is that the love of her life is actually a woman. So you get to see how her love for this woman has motivated these marriages to men, and I love her because she is such a morally great character, and I just thought that the book was incredible. It blew my fucking mind. I'm gonna read to you my Goodreads review of this book. Holy fucking shit, fuck, shit, damn. addictive. Every single person in this book is real and you cannot convince me otherwise. So much heart and soul was poured into every page. My mind is blown. Kaboom, my mind says, exploding. I am incoherent. I have no words. Please, everyone read this book. Wow, holy shit, fuck, wow. Oh my gosh, yes, what was that? OMG, gay, I love it. Please, please, Harry Cameron is a gem. I love him, please. What, wow, what, okay, yes, bye, thanks. This book was so good! After the book, all I wanted to do was watch Evelyn Hugo's movies, and I kept looking them up and then realizing she was a fictional character. And I can't tell you how frustrating that was for me because this book feels so real. Now we're getting to the top 5 books of the year. Number 5 is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doughty. This book kind of rocked my world. It is a memoir from Caitlin Doughty, who is a mortician and who worked in a crematory. Caitlin Doughty is also a YouTuber, and I love her YouTube videos. She does all these great videos on being a mortician and the death industry and iconic corpses and all these really cool things. Kind of any question you've ever had about death and the way that the death industry works, she kind of answers in her YouTube videos and in this book. But this book is her memoir, and it details her experience from working at a crematory through mortuary school and then becoming a mortician. And it also really dives into the death industry, specifically the American death industry, and how we think about death in the modern age. And I found it really interesting because one of the things that she talks about a lot is how our modern perception of death and the norms surrounding death actually only came about because of the Industrial Revolution and the rise of these technologies from industrialism. And I was just fascinated by this concept and the idea that for hundreds and thousands of years we've had all these other ways of thinking about death, and now we have this one really concrete norm of what death is supposed to look like and feel like, and how a body is supposed to be preserved or not preserved, and how this is only a development in the past like 150 to 200 years. I will say this book is extremely graphic. It goes into content about working in a crematory, being a mortician, so if you don't want to read about dead bodies, I definitely would not pick this book up. But if you're cool with that, I think this is a book everyone should read if you can stomach it, because it really changed my whole way of thinking about death and the death industry and what death means and how it works. And I just found it fascinating. I've never read anything like it. I kind of am obsessed with it, and I keep recommending it to people, so I would definitely recommend it to you. I just realized I forgot to tell you my ratings for the past couple books. So Ninth House I rated 4 stars, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous I rated 4 stars, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo I rated 5 stars, Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory I rated 5 stars. The next book, number 4 on the list, is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I have to say, any one of the 4 currently published volumes could have been a favorite of the year, but because this was the first one, I just decided to go with this one. Heartstopper is a graphic novel series about Nick and Charlie, and it is their relationship, and it is so adorable and wholesome, and I love it so much, and it has brought me so much joy this past year. I actually just finished reading Solitaire, which is the book that kind of overlaps with Nick and Charlie's story. It's from the perspective of Charlie's sister Tori, and I really enjoyed that. I saw a Goodreads review that said this is my emotional support LGBTQ+ graphic novel, and yes, I love these. I'm obsessed with these. The artwork is adorable. It makes me so happy. So I would 100% recommend. I've recommended this to so many people in my life. They're so cute. You can read them pretty quickly. And if you want to read something, but you kind of need to give your brain and your soul and your energy a break from like really intense books about death, which is kind of all I read, I would recommend Heartstopper. Number 3 on this list is The Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This series had a chokehold on me for like the first 5 or 6 months of the year. I was obsessed with it. I randomly found it one day when I was at the bookstore here in DC, just kind of walking around looking for something new to read. I started it. I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't know. And from the first page, I was hooked. It was so good. It was one of those books books that I read and just immediately knew it was gonna be 5-star. Oh my god, I'm obsessed with this series. I rated the first 2 books in the series 5 stars, and honestly, just like Heartstopper, either one of them could have been the favorite of the year because they were both equally as good, but I just kind of went with the first one to make more sense for you guys. I'm gonna attempt to describe it now. Honestly, I went into this book blind, and this is one of the books that I think you should just go into knowing nothing. The way I'm gonna describe what this book feels like is a mix of House Moving Castle, the Ghibli movie, and the dark politics of the courts of Versailles. My little Versailles. It's whimsical and magical, but also dark and corrupt. I cannot recommend this book enough, especially if you're a Ghibli fan, and especially if you're looking for a Ghibli movie in book form. I would recommend this to you. I think it is absolutely incredible. My second best book of the year is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This was my #1 book for a while until I read the book that replaced this, which if you follow me on social media, you know what that book is. It's not gonna be a surprise. I rated this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. Jane Eyre is probably the quintessential gothic novel about a female protagonist named Jane Eyre. We follow her throughout her life and her experiences with Mr. Rochester, and I will say this book had me crying. This book had me rolling on the floor. This book like entered into my body and took hold of my consciousness for the entirety of the time I was reading it. It ended me. It drove me fucking crazy in the best possible way. The writing in here, beautiful. The gothic setting is incredible. Mr. Rochester is sexy. Let's just talk about that for a second because this is controversial. Would I consider him kind of icky? Yes. Do I think the relationship is like a little problematic? Absolutely. Absolutely. Do I still think he's hot? So I'm gonna have to say yes. Jane Eyre was fantastic. It's one of my favorite classics of all time. I would highly recommend you read it. I read it in January and it has stuck with me throughout this entire year. I'm really excited to read it again. There's just so much goodness in here. There's this beautiful juxtaposition between darkness and lightness, and I am obsessed with watching Jane Eyre analysis videos. I've seen, I think, literally every single one on YouTube. This book owns me. Please just read this. I don't have the words to describe how much I love it and why you should read it because I just think you need to read it. All right, guys, we're shaking it out. We're shaking it out. We're getting ready because we're at the last book and I need my full mental energy to be able to talk about this. The best book of the year. Nay, the best book I've ever read in my entire life. My new favorite book, tied with Little Women as my favorite book of all time, ever in the history of ever. Crying in the H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I'm gonna try to speak about this book and be coherent. I doubt it's gonna happen, but I'm gonna try, and that's what matters because it's the thought that counts. So Michelle Zauner, the author of Crying in H Mart, is Japanese Breakfast. Yes, the Grammy-nominated indie pop rock band Japanese Breakfast. I'm fucking obsessed with them. The Jubilee album is my favorite album currently. I was top 0.5% of Japanese Breakfast's listeners this year for my Spotify Wrapped. They were my top artist. My top song was Be Sweet. Okay, we get it. I love them. I got to go to their concert at the Brooklyn Steel in New York in October. Did I spend over $100 just on Japanese Breakfast merch? The answer is yes. I got to stand right at the front. It was so cool. I'll insert a picture here showing you how close I was because it was one of the best days of my entire life, the best concert I've ever been to. Make it up to me, you know it's better. Be sweet to me, baby. I'm a huge Japanese Breakfast fan. Anyway, I forgot to mention that I actually have 2 copies of this book. One is just the regular copy that I bought after listening to the audiobook, and the other one is a signed edition with exclusive artwork on a bookmark that I got at the Japanese Breakfast concert at the Brooklyn Steel. They were only selling 36 and I got the last one, and it honestly means so much to me. So here's a picture of that. This is a memoir of Michelle. It describes her relationship with her Korean mother as her mother is dying of cancer. I can't even speak about this book without like hyperventilating. Every time I walk into a bookstore, I grab it and I just start like putting it places so people can find it because I want more people to read it. I listened to this book on audio, which Michelle narrates, and this audiobook had me weeping like multiple times, like to the point where when I was finishing the book, I was sitting eating breakfast at my kitchen table and my mom comes downstairs and sees me fucking hyperventilating, and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was just listening to the audiobook. I have so many thoughts and feelings about this book and what it means to me that honestly, like, it's really hard to put it into words. I felt this book in my bones. This book reached into my body and gripped my very soul and like fused with my soul. I felt like every aspect of this book was something that I related to, something that I've experienced in my life, was taking place in a location that I have connections to. It was like this book was written specifically to connect with me and my heart and my lived experience and just everything in my entire life. I relate so much to Michelle's experience as an artist, as someone whose family specializes in tough love, as someone who grew up in a culture that is not the dominant culture of their community and they were constantly ostracized and experienced a lot of trauma that came from that. Someone who uses food as a way to connect to my heritage and connect to my family and communicate love. And just as someone who enjoys like a good spicy meal, okay? This book really utilizes food as just this heart-wrenching mode of communication, of deep feelings of love and care. And that's actually one of the reasons why this book surprised me so much, because I usually don't like books about food, but I think the way that food is used in this book just really hit me right in my soul. A lot of this book actually takes place in my hometown and in other locations that I have familial connections to. So I will say it was incredibly real and visceral for me because I've lived in these locations. I've been to these restaurants. The H Mart that she would go to after her mother died is the H Mart closest to my house. And throughout reading this, I couldn't help but just think, if I had ever run into her in these locations, at what point of her story would I have been seeing her in and interacting her in? And it just made me think about the ways that everyone is going through something and you never know what someone is going through in their life and what someone is dealing with. So this book broke my heart, and it did it in the most absolutely cathartic way possible. Her depiction of her relationship with her mother and her experience of grief is something that deeply resonated with me. It was nothing less than a 5-star read. Absolutely incredible. My favorite read of the year, possibly my favorite read of all time. So those were the 5-star books of the year. Thank you so much for watching. I had a great reading year and I'm really excited for everything that 2020. I had a great reading year and I'm really excited for everything that 2022 is going to be bringing into my life. I'm really curious to hear from you what your favorite reads of the year were, if you have any recommendations, if you read any of these books and what you thought of them, and what you're thinking is gonna be a great read for the next year. Bye!